Discussion of regular meeting agenda. Do we have any discussion on that? Any changes? I think we're good. Okay. Phyllis, I do adjourn it and then I just reopen it, right, to do number 7.
Chairman Sippel, you recess it.
Recess, that's what I was looking for. I have to ask every time. Okay, all right. Well, then we will go ahead and recess the study session. We're going to go ahead and do a quick 4-minute break. I'm going to hold you to that. All right. All right. We're going to go ahead and open our regular meeting of April 5th, 2007 for the Planning Commission. Can I get a roll call, please?
Chairman Christopher Sipple,
Present.
Vice Chairman Brian Anderson,
Yep.
Commissioner Carl Bloomfield,
Here.
Commissioner David Cavaney,
Here.
Commissioner Greg Froelich, Commissioner Brian Johns,
Here.
Commissioner Joshua Ayler,
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Seth Banda, Alternate Commissioner Mary Harris. Here.
Thank you. Can I get an approval of the agenda, please?
I motion we approve the agenda.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Anderson, a second by Commissioner Cavaney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters within this jurisdiction of the town of Gilbert, but not on the agenda. The commission response is limited to responding to criticism, asking the staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that the matter be put on a future agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close that. Phyllis? And move on to the public hearing consent. All items listed below are considered consent calendar items and may be approved by a single motion unless removed at the request of a commission member for further discussion or action. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent calendar and approved under a single motion. This evening's consent agenda consists of ST 16-08 Ray and Wrecker, S17-1001, S17-01 requests to approve a preliminary plat and open space plan for Fulton Homes, Cooley Station. DR 17-1003 Watch Me Grow site plan and landscaping. DR 16-51 Dutch Brothers Coffee site plan and landscape. And DR 16-53 Eternal Springs of Gilbert site plan and landscape plan. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on any of those items? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a motion. Oh, sorry, Phyllis. Go ahead. You want me to close it and then ask for the motion? Yes.
Yes.
I'll close the public hearing consent and call for a motion.
I motion we approve the consent items as read.
Motion's been made by Vice Chair Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, by Commissioner Bloomfield. Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're just moving right along. Public hearing non-consent. So the non-consent items will be heard at individual public hearings and will be acted upon on the commission by a separate motion. So we've got Z17-1000 medical marijuana request to amend the Town of Gilbert Land Development Code. Bob Caravona.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening again. Bob Caravona, Senior Planner, presenting case Z17-1000 Medical Marijuana Code Amendment. As this is a regular session or for public hearing, just want to make that correction on the screen. This is to amend Article 4.5 of our Land Development Use Code, specifically 4.5014, medical marijuana dispensaries, off-site cultivation sites, and designated caregiver cultivation locations. The specific request is relating to hours of operations, retail of sales of related goods, and an emergency door. Just a briefly background. Prop 203 was passed by the voters to allow the cultivation of medical marijuana. ARS 3628 is enabling legislation for medical marijuana, and that's important to understand that this is setting the framework for how this is governed and regulated. Within that legislation, it lists the department as the regulatory agency, and that is the Arizona Department of Health Services. And it creates that department the ability to adopt rules for that, for medical marijuana. And some of those rules that they've been authority to adopt is that it's for the purpose of protecting against diversion and theft without posing undue burden upon the nonprofit medical marijuana dispensaries. And it's to provide minimum oversight and minimum security requirements. And you also have a fully operational alarm system. I'm just briefly touching on these items because it's very detailed as to how these dispensaries and cultivation centers operate. So what is the request and what are some of the rules that the ADHS has made? So what we're here to discuss is the hours of operation. When I was doing my research, I was surprised to learn that dispensaries are supposed to be open a minimum of 30 hours between the hours of, say, 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. That gives you a parameter for what they can operate within. The jurisdictions have the ability to narrow that focus of those hours. And that's typically through the land use code. And in our particular case, it's the conditional use permit. In terms of secure entrances, the proposition that was passed states that it's supposed to have a single secure entrance. And from that definition, went down a few routes during my research, but have recently come back full circle again in this last couple days, as you saw from the revisions, and maintain, and I'll explain that a little bit later, that it will have to have a single secure entrance, but there's also room in that provision to allow for exits and emergency exits. In terms of merchandise, it did not speak to incidental merchandise, and so that would be regulated through the Land Development Code that we adopted. In terms from the city's perspective, we adopted the LDC back in 2005. The anticipation of the medical marijuana, we amended that code in 2011 and then recently 2016. And then at that time, in the recent 2016, the dispensary wanted to address these things that were these issues that we are addressing tonight, but to get the matters through and passed. At that time, the city and town elected just to go ahead and approve what was presented in front of the town council. The zone districts that these are located in are light industrial and general industrial zoning districts, and they do require a conditional use permit. And within those conditional use permits, it lists the standards and regulations. So where did the requests initiate from? It came from the council members who initiated this in January 26, 2017. And with that request, it was to extend the hours, look at a code to amend the code to allow for more than one secure entrance from 1 to 2, and then also look at the modification on the limitation of sale of merchandise other than medical marijuana. As part of this process, we are to engage the community, have stakeholder involvement, and I was very pleased with the stakeholder involvement and also with the facility that we engaged with, which was Emerald Palace. They had opened up their facilities for members to tour the facilities and staff, so we become aware and understand of the issues at hand in terms of emergency, how it operates, the security measures that are in place, and it was educational and shed some light on the issues. Some of the comments that I came away from is that the current dispensary has one entrance per code, and if there was a emergency instance, there's only that one entrance to go out. Customers, staff, those behind that entrance may be compromised if there's not an emergency way out. So I have a very strong feeling that that there should be the ability to have an emergency exit. As part of their approval of that CUP, there is the ability to have a door, or they have a door there, but it's been welded shut. It's been covered over with drywall, so there's no access out. And then also, their current hours are 8 to 6, and I've learned that it's inconvenient to patients. There's sales losses to competing businesses and other jurisdictions, and this is a highly competitive business. And it's very inconvenient for those people who do have working hours. So I briefly touched on some of the, I already did touch on the summary of the stakeholder concerns. And in terms of incidental retail sales, they're not interested in being a paraphernalia shop, head shop. There's inconvenience to new customers who are unaware of how medical marijuana is either ingested, infused, smoked, etc. And that would cause them to go to other facilities to buy the different components to use the medical marijuana. Mostly they're providing batteries to customers as a convenience. So they'd like to charge for batteries. And then also they would like to do promotional materials, much like other dispensaries, if you will. Not dispensaries, pharmacies. You know, if you take a look at CVS and Walgreens, they have the ability to dispense drugs and also to promote their business. So, narrowing the focus to hours of operation, looking across other jurisdictions, Town of Gilbert has the most conservative of the other jurisdictions with the closing of 6 p.m. Typically 8, 9 p.m. is typical, and then with the City of Phoenix, you're allowed to have a variance and go to 10 p.m. Staff is in support of amending that hours of operations to 8 p.m., and that's what they were requesting as part of this amendment as a stakeholder, is that they have the ability to go to 8 p.m. And they find that in our conversation that would be acceptable. And this is the recommended amended text that you'll find in your staff report that just acknowledges the 8 p.m. In terms of secured entrances, this has gone in depth in study and understanding and legal understanding and coming back as very recently as the other days, as you saw in your staff report, that amendment. So the legal position from the Town of Gilbert is that it is a single secure entrance, that a delivery door is not permitted. And then just following up on the due diligence that I stated earlier in the study session that I would call ADHS, I finally got a hold with them today, this afternoon, with a person named Doreen Call. She's a state licensing surveyor, and we had a discussion about this, and she stated that single secured entrance is permitted. Emergency exits are permissible, that they won't trump local safety. However, she restated that delivery doors or other doors are not permitted, and they are the regulatory agency for that. And as a reminder, through the CUP process and through the ADHS process to get permitting, they do have to submit, a dispensary does have to submit a security plan to ADHS for their review. So in terms of recommend secured entrances within your report is recommended amended language is that it is an emergency exit may be provided that shall be accessed only from the interior and alarmed to prevent its use for any purpose other than an actual emergency. And this is another place which is 4.5014E subsection 3 with the additional language of if an emergency exit is provided, it shall be detailed on the plan as being operable only as an emergency. So that also relates to other discussions with the fire department that the door has to operate as an emergency door. And so it has to, or I'm sorry, with the building department, it has to be fully operational for that. And it's not supposed to be for deliveries or for staff to exit the building. In terms of medical sales limited to medical marijuana, Town of Gilbert appears to be the only jurisdiction with specific limitations on the sale of merchandise. Staff is in support of amending the language to include sell only medical marijuana and merchandise incidental to its use. So that's the ability to have, and it's broad. It does have the ability to sell smoke inhalation devices. It also is broad that you can have coffee mugs because, as I learned, that there's liquid THC that you're able to, forgive me if I'm calling out the wrong substance, the medical marijuana. So it's broad in nature, but it's primarily used for ingesting and infusion of the medicinal marijuana. And then for the reasons of recommendations, it conforms to the general plan, area plan, zoning districts, et cetera. This is our typical language that you'll find for the reasons of recommendation. Public notice has been conducted, and then public meetings and hearings have been held, and they are being conducted. And, excuse me, and the proposed rezoning supports the town's strategic initiative for community livability, and it supports the motto, Gilbert Clean, Safe, and Vibrant. And with that, I'm available for questions. We also have, I believe, the police chief, building official, and some other members of staff available.
All right. Bob, thank you. Since the town is the applicant, we'll move on to the public hearing portion of the evening. I do have 4 people here wishing to speak. So what I'd ask you to do is, when I call out your name, come on up to the podium there, state your name, town of residence, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. I've got Donald Tucker, who is in favor of the item and is wishing to speak. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Donald Tucker. A little history as far as my background. I graduated from University of Iowa. I then started working with the Federal Bureau of Narcotics as a narcotic agent in Chicago, Illinois. I transferred to the U.S. Secret Service, and I was with the Secret Service for 25 years. I left the Secret Service. When I retired, I became the United States Marshal for the state of Arizona for 4 years. After that, I was head of security for the federal court system nationwide for 4 years. And now I am the owner of my own private investigation agency. In discussing the situation with the marijuana clinic, when I was approached to be a person who could support it, initially, I was pretty hesitant, because if you look back at my career, I arrested a lot of people for narcotic violations, including heroin, opium, and marijuana. I really had to give it a very, very serious thought about, my career and what I was early about marijuana, and could I actually be effective supporting medical marijuana. Education is a very, very important thing, and looking at different situations that have occurred, looking at, I believe it was a program called Charlotte's Web, where a young woman who had about 20 different episodes in her life, and her parents were at the point where they didn't know what to do with the situation, and it got to the point where they started using medical marijuana. The episodes went from 20 down to 2. When I did more research and looking at different things, and a good friend of mine, Mel McDonald, who's going to speak today, he had a situation with one of his kids, and his wife, also were at a point where she didn't know what to do. I'm not going to get in detail because I'm sure Mel McDonald is going to explain that. I have heard, and I know people who have hesitation about medical marijuana. And, I can honestly say that after doing research about medical marijuana, it's not the same as heroin, and it's not the same as opium. You know, I honestly feel that based on my experience, you know, the benefits from medical marijuana, you know, is an advantage to a lot of people who have certain physical problems. So I just like to just express my appreciation for being allowed to speak to you today, and to say that I think that the medical marijuana dispensary that is the subject of this conversation, you know, I looked at it, I visited it, I looked at all the security arrangements, I made recommendations, and I think it's not only going to be a benefit, but it's also going to be a benefit for the city of Gilbert. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donald. Mel McDonald, if you could, is in favor of the item and wishes to speak. Mel, if you could just give us your name and town, city of residence.
Thank you. My name is Mel McDonald. I'm a resident of Gilbert. Seeing you up there brings back memories. I served on the town council from 1993 to 1997. I've been a Superior Court judge for 7 years. I was appointed by President Reagan to be the United States Attorney for 4 years. I led the war on drugs under the Reagan administration, which is where I met Don Tucker. I became involved in the medical marijuana field when my son was hit by a car in 2010 and sustained major brain damage. Actually, it was 1997, but the marijuana ruling came out, the voters, in 2010. The reason that I support it is that I've seen what it does in the lives of the patients. My son went from 180 to 117 pounds. The only thing that stopped the nausea was the medical marijuana. At the time, in the early 2000s, it was illegal. But my wife, to save her son's life, would get him illegal marijuana to keep him alive. In 2010, when the proposition passed, I vowed that I would come out, which I did in 2012, and support it. I brought people on like Don Tucker so that planners like yourself can know that the very best and brightest in the security field are working with the clients, in this case, the dispensary. Another criteria I've always used is to look at the people that are running the dispensary before I'll become involved. I've served on it as a chairman of another dispensary. I know the people that own and run this dispensary, absolutely blue chip people. I've always maintained that if anybody takes a seed out of the door, you turn them in and you prosecute them, because I don't want to see anything happen that's going to be harmful to this industry, because it serves legitimate medicinal needs. I urge you to support the advanced hours from 6 to 8. Many people like myself with law practices downtown, if I need to get medical marijuana for my son, there's no way I'm going to be here by 6 o'clock. As a matter of fact, all of the surrounding areas, including the dispensaries where I was on the board, had till 8 o'clock at night. It only makes sense to get the people here to serve the people of Gilbert and give them the expanded hours. The security, candidly, is a no-brainer. I will confess, when we've been to tours, I'm always nervous when I go into that building because there is no escape entrance. And that is a must, I think, to create the second emergency exit so that, heaven forbid, if there's a fire or some calamity, people are not trapped in there and are going to die. And last, the incidental items there that are provided, the vaporizers and things like that, are essential. There's some people that don't want to smoke, but they do want to inhale it in a vaporizer. Some of the things to help service this are currently prohibited by the town, but I would encourage you to support all three of those amendments. These are good people. It's a wonderful program they have here, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Lindsay Shuby, I might have said that wrong. I apologize, Lindsay. In favor and wishes to speak, just name and city of residence.
Mr. Chair, Lindsay Shuby. I'm a land use lawyer. I can't not have a PowerPoint presentation, even though this is Bob's case. Oh, right here. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Lindsay Shuby with the law firm of Gamage and Burnham to North Central. Okay, I'm wasting my time here. How do I get it? Okay, Bob, can you help me again? How do I get in the presentation mode? Slideshow. Real slide. Okay. There we go. Sorry. Okay. And I apologize if I go 30 seconds over. I'm not technologically sound. Lindsay Shuby, 2 North Central, law firm of Gamage and Burnham. I'm here on behalf of the dispensary owner that you have in Gilbert Emerald. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details that Bob did because Bob did a very thorough job, not only at the study session last month, but today. I think it's just important to know that these codes continue to evolve, that you guys did a fabulous job when you adopted your code. Tempe is going through their DRC, just heard last week, another change to their code. 2 years ago, they changed their hours, that you guys had the same hours when you both initially adopted your code. 2 years ago, they went in and they increased their hours from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., which is what's in front of you tonight. And they're looking at other things in terms of their separation requirements, which was the change that you guys made in 2016. So you did a great job adopting your code. My client likes to say it was such a good code and such a good process, he didn't even need a lawyer. So you guys did such a good job. Our 3 requests are pretty simple. We want to extend the hours to 8 p.m. That's along the lines of what a lot of the other jurisdictions are doing. The state limits the hours to 10 p.m. Mesa allows dispensaries to be open until 9. In Phoenix, they have to close at 7, but you can go for a variance to be open until 10 o'clock at night. We'd like to increase the number of doors to allow an optional security emergency exit and the retail sale of incidental merchandise. The hours are pretty clear. Again, Tempe used to have to close at 6 p.m. They realize the same concerns as you do, and they're even closer to downtown, that their residents just couldn't get there in time. Bob spoke a little bit about the outreach that they did, and we did outreach at the dispensary, and we got 758 petition signatures from different people supporting this hour change. Obviously, we're not going to bring 758 people here. But it's interesting. Chandler, there were 252 residents of Chandler that come to our dispensary and give sales tax to the town of Gilbert. 174 people from Mesa. Gilbert is 255. So the most people do come from Gilbert. But we have a lot of support for this. We just brought the petitions. I have them all here if you want to see them. We have support from the building department, from the police. It was very important to us that your police department was supportive. We did a tour with Police Chief Dorn and have continued conversations with Police Chief Bryce. Obviously, we wouldn't want to bring forward something that your departments couldn't get behind. Emergency exit. With regard to the entrances, I just want to say on the record, we've kind of gone back and forth. You guys have a fabulous town attorney, not only in Mike Hamblin, but with Phyllis Smiley. I want to say that we are allowed to have delivery in the back, but we would never propose anything that's contrary to state law. Phyllis has worked it hard and looked at the interpretation. Bob made a call to the state today. We'd like to continue to investigate that before we get to council. Again, we would never propose something that's contrary to state law. We know you guys would never accept that. Our primary concern is the emergency exit. We would like deliveries in the back. For those of you that came and toured the facility, I do believe deliveries in the back are a safer, better mechanism for us to get the medicine into the building. That said, if we continue to use our front entrance for the product to come in, we appreciate that and we understand. Again, would never go anything contrary to Phyllis. So if you don't mind, we're going to continue to work with Phyllis. For tonight, we'll move forward with the emergency exit only. But if you have any comments on product delivery in the back, we'd appreciate it for the record. As opposed to, for selling merchandise, I think this is important. And I'm a land use lawyer, School of Paul Gilbert for 10 years. Now I'm with Grady Gamage at Gamage and Burnham. When they said selling merchandise, I didn't totally understand that. When they talk about batteries, I kind of thought, well, AAA's at Costco are a lot cheaper than, anything these guys would say. I didn't understand. But so they do have, as Mel was explaining, a vaping system. So there's unbelievable ways of getting this medicine into different patients for different ailments. And again, we're talking about the regulatory side tonight, but as far as the sale, the battery for the vaping system is not like a AAA. that you get at Costco. That my 81-year-old dad goes and gets me a lot of batteries. If you ever need batteries, come to my house. But this vaping system, you put it in a cartridge, and then and it's a very interesting system. We can't sell that. If we sold that, we'd be in violation, not of state law, because state law doesn't care what you sell in the dispensary. They limit, there's a lot of regulation on the marijuana and how it's managed, how it's tracked, all of that. So what we are asking for is incidental sales, because we have gotten bad reviews. And we want to be a good citizen, we want to be a good steward, we want to be a good small business in the town of Gilbert. So there are just these mechanisms for ingesting the medicine. We worked really hard on the language. Sell only medical marijuana and merchandise incidental to its use. If anyone has any better proposals, let Bob and I know, but we worked really hard and we think that that's the best one. So that's it. We've got recommendation of approval from your staff, no objections, 758 signatures in support. I've got all the petitions here if anyone wants to look at them, and I respectfully request approval and stand for questions.
Thank you, Lindsay. There is one more. Robert, I have you, but you didn't, you just had put that you're in favor of the item. Did you want to speak, or? No? Okay, very good. All right, town is the applicant, so do you have anything additional that you'd like to add, Bob, before I ask for comments and questions?
Chairman Sippel, I do not have anything else.
Okay. All right, I'll bring it up to the dais here for some, yes, for some discussion and questions. Yeah, question for Bob.
So, when it comes to merchandise, did you guys look at like the verbiage of like medical equipment or something narrowing that scope from, because it's pretty broad, or medical merchandise? Or?
Commissioner Ayler, I did look at another jurisdictions, I believe it was Chandler's, and it was very specific and verbose, and it was very narrowing as to, I think it may be in your staff report still if it hasn't been stricken. So the language was basically for ingestion, inhalation, consumption for devices to that type. I think this is succinct and it's broad enough to accomplish what they need to do.
Okay. And then how just looking at the other city, Phoenix with the variants, do we have any data on how many have gone for that variance, or have they held fast to the 7 o'clock?
Commissioner Ayler, I do not have that information. Perhaps Lindsay does.
Bring on.
Yeah.
I was trying to look up the Chandler language for you. Chairman, Commissioner, no, that's harder than Chubby. How do you say your last name?
Ayler.
Ayler. Commissioner.
Good enough.
A lot of people have gone for that variance, and a lot have been approved. And I believe there's 6 or 7 right now that have been approved, allowing 10 p.m. in Phoenix. And what's as important as not only the number that have been approved, but the city of Phoenix, in their ordinance, requires a 1-year status update. Well, 3 years ago, they gave out all these use permits and they didn't do any status updates. In December of 2016 and into January of 17, they realized we've got to do a status update for all these people. They took 17 use permits away just because there were people that never actually opened the dispensary. We had to do police stats for all of the use permits. There was no difference in terms of crime or operations for the dispensaries that are allowed the 10 p.m. hours. The dispensaries that had any issues with crime had nothing to do with the dispensary, but more to do with the part of town they were in. And I know your police chief is here. He's pulled the stats for this area, for your dispensary, as have I. And there's no police issues. And in Phoenix, there haven't been either. The one that had the most police calls, it's actually someone I represented, and the hearing officer had no problem with it because the police calls were all related to things happening in the neighborhood. So the dispensary has actually been fantastic. They added even more security cameras. They give the police access to the security cameras. They call the police if someone's breaking into a car. They called the police because there was a child that was missing. So they passed their review with flying colors. Hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Other questions? Are there any other questions for staff? Okay.
Sorry.
Yep, go ahead. Go
And
for it.
then, emergency, you said it'll be a emergency and alarmed, so like a panic hardware with alarm, hardwired alarm, so they can't disable it?
Correct, Commissioner Ayler. It would have to be, it would have to be alarmed, and this is also part of ADHS rules that govern dispensaries. All doors and exits from the building have to be secured, monitored, and videotaped. And what we learned also on the tour is that they have to hold these videotape for 30 days as well. So it's probably stronger than a casino security systems.
Okay. Yeah, emergency exiting is different than emergency exited alarm, because you could just have an exit sign and push bar and be done with it, panic device, so. All right, thank you.
Bob, stay up here. Vice Chair.
Bob, just one quick question for you. I know I've asked this before and wanted to see if you got the answer to it. Did you ever find out what the use group for this facility is? Is it a B for business, or is it an A sign, I believe, for a retail use? Did you ever find that answer out?
Yes, I believe it was occupancy M. That was the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. So for mercantile, okay. Now, just a question can I address people on the board, the other architects that are on this board?
Yeah.
So the question is, for business, if you have an occupant load under 50, you're allowed one egress point in and out of the building. Is it the same for mercantile as well? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but your occupant load changes, it goes 30 square feet per occupant on mercantile, but then when you go to a business, it's 100 square feet per occupant. That's your differential of change there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There are no other questions for Bob. I will close the public hearing, bring it back up to the dais for discussion. Who would like to begin? Okay. Commissioner Cavaney.
Oh, thank you, Bob, for the presentation. So this past week, the applicant did offer tours of the site for any commissioners who want to go. I took advantage of that. I went and met with them, and I had to tell you, it was. I found a good business owner. I found a conscientious management. I think it's a well-run operation, and I was impressed with the cleanliness. I was impressed with the order. So I think it was different than I expected, given the previous experiences we've had with other medical marijuana cases that we've heard. So with that said, and as I've looked at all the data, I don't struggle allowing the increase in time. I have pressed against that before, but I am pleased that the applicant is not asking for the moon here. They could have asked for 10, and we would have had to consider that, but they've asked for a moderate increase, which I can support. With regards to the egress point, with all the buildings I've built in my life, and I am not an architect, qualify there, but I've never seen a building without an emergency egress point for an emergency, for a fire or whatever. So it did feel rather constraining as I saw the welded door in the back and realized that there was no way out in the back. So I would definitely support that. I'm not sure I understand the delivery concern for not being able to deliver through the back. Frankly, for me, it would be safer to do that from an owner's perspective, but certainly want to follow whatever laws we have to follow on that. So we'll consider that, I guess, as we move forward. But for now, I can certainly support a panicked egress point in the back for emergency. With regards to the merchandise, so here's my feeling on this. As they explained to me some of the delivery systems that deliver marijuana into the system for medicinal purposes, I can appreciate that those devices probably ought to be sellable to the customers, to the patrons. I get that. I don't believe that this is the right location to sell T-shirts and hats and mugs and other things that market the space. Now, I know some may argue, well, they're a business. Let them market themselves. But it's actually a unique business. Constrained, its customers are constrained by those that have medical marijuana cards and only medical marijuana cards. You can't just go in there and buy product from them if you don't have that. So I don't see the necessary benefit or value of marketing the business to the general public by T-shirts and hats and mugs, etc. Besides, when you do that, you push this beyond a medicinal-only product into a mainstream product And then it starts to look more like it is more in the recreational realm, which obviously is not allowable at this time. So I don't particularly like the language that's been proposed. I don't think it's narrow enough. What I would like to propose is that we consider a language that focuses on strictly the medically required delivery systems, whether that be a vaporizer. I don't pretend to know all of the methods that happen here, but I think we keep it to the delivery system. I agree that that's part of the medicinal marijuana process. That is allowable in a medicinal way, so we should allow the delivery systems to be included. So I think if we can find the right way to narrowly describe that, and maybe we do look at the language from other jurisdictions that have verbosely described it, maybe that's the right way to go in order to let them sell the things they need to sell to actually let the users use it. They did explain to me that currently, in order to kind of help their customers out, they're giving away some of those things, and obviously that's not fair to them to have to give away product that they've had to purchase. So I would support that. But I do not support the marketing merchandise because of the nature of the medicinal only, the law mandated type product that they're selling. So in summary, I'm good with the hours requested. I'm good with the emergency egress as long as it's panicked and for emergency egress only at this point. And I'm okay if we narrowly define the merchandise to be simply the delivery system of the marijuana.
Thank you. Commissioner Johns?
Well, Commissioner Cavaney kind of shed some light on the merchandise product. I was kind of on the wall, but I'll go ahead and start with the hours. I think we need to be competitive with the other. As for the town of Gilbert, this is one of the businesses they support, and we're not going to be competitive with the neighboring communities. It's allowed by law, so I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. I'm an architect. Health, safety, welfare is a major issue to me, and to be able to not have a exit door out of the back of a facility, that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, you got to have a way to be able to get this public out of in case there is a fire, or we're going to have bigger headlines than what we're seeing now. So I'd fully support having an exit only, emergency exit only. I'm on the wall with if they need to bring merchandise in, I'll let the higher wage people figure that one out. And then on the merchandise, I originally voted for medical marijuana because of those people that needed it, and it's a better option than some of the other options I saw out there. And to ask that person to say, okay, come over here and you have to purchase at this location and go somewhere else to go get a delivery system, that doesn't make sense to me. So I don't have an issue with them being able to sell a delivery system. I wasn't having an issue with the T-shirts and such, but it kind of shed some light on the fact that this is a medical. I mean, this is, and you don't see Mercy Gilbert handing out T-shirts when people leave. So, I kind of changed my opinion on that a bit, and I support it. I think there needs to be a little bit more definition on the merchandise, but I support the other two.
Commissioner Ayler.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll just kind of give my brief points. I also agree with the emergency exit. I just want to make sure it's controlled. It's nice that the state is looking at it. And I know as this operator is doing well, but this is a text amendment for all future operators too. So we have to look at it as a text amendment, not as just for one operator, though this operator seems to be running in a good manner. So I just want to make sure. I notice it says alarm under general B and then 2, but then under security plan it just says operable. I just want to make sure it's alarmed, just so it doesn't get tampered with. And then I also agree on the merchandise. I don't know if it's a medical equipment. 100% agree that they should be able to sell medical equipment, be able to sell pieces that help distribute the drug into the body, but outside of that, I worry that we get too much into a retail component and not a medical component. So if there's some better verbiage, if it goes to kind of how Chandler had it set up, and gets a little more defined, that'd be great. And on the time, I also had a pushback when it first came to us a year or so ago when this case, well, when we've kind of gone back and forth. I was a no vote on increasing the hours. I can see the need for it. One, that I work downtown, and driving in and trying to get back here by 6 o'clock just to make it here is hard enough. So I understand that. So I kind of was intrigued by the City of Phoenix's variance to carry it past, but maybe that's just a little too much extra steps that we don't really need. If we can, if we're only taking to 8 o'clock, I think 8 o'clock is reasonable. I think if we were starting to push to 10 o'clock, that would not be reasonable. And then my 2 cents on the delivery. I don't even know how long ago. I guess 2011 this came in front of us originally. And then I thought there was, if you did a delivery and it came into the building and was controlled, and it was kind of like a vestibule setup where like the truck could come in and be locked down and then brought in. But I don't know. I mean, all those rules have changed from day one of all this. So I would just remember conversation of that. So my worry on the deliveries, if it was to ever get changed, is how that control goes into the back and the product gets moved securely. So I know it's not in front of us, but it was brought up. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? But you have one, Commissioner Bloomfield. You're good? Okay. Okay. Vice Chair.
So my thoughts on all this, support the hours. I support the egress point. I also would have supported the delivery, but unfortunately, that's a state-regulated thing, and Bob educated us a little bit more with this conversation today that we just don't have any say on that matter. So I would think any discussions furthermore with the town would just would be pretty moot. I think those discussions would be better time-wise spent with the state to try and convince them to make those changes. And then we could come back to us and say, hey, well, the state's now allowing deliveries. Can we amend the code again and include that? Regarding the incidental items, I support the selling of other items. And my main reason for that is, at the end of the day, it's a retail store, and they're in the business of selling items. Commissioner Cavanagh, you made a statement earlier that nobody could go into this place without a medicinal marijuana card. Well, you can't go into CVS or Walgreens and buy a bottle of Percocets when you hurt your back without going to your doctor to get a prescription for that. Those types of items are even more regulated than medicinal marijuana. I think from my tour, I learned that medicinal marijuana, you can only buy 1 gram a week. If you buy a bottle of Percocets, I mean, you get 1 refill. And after that, you need to go back to your doctor and prove that you need more. And at the end of the day, prescription drugs are more of a killer in this country than medicinal marijuana. They're the most abused drug in the country. And I read a stat that painkillers kill more people in this country compared to cocaine, heroin, and crystal meth combined. So if we're going to allow CVS and Walgreens to sell incidental items outside the realm of pharmaceuticals, as shirts, mugs, I went to Walgreens today to get some cold medicine, and they're selling Easter stuff. So I favor, and I hope people will sway their opinion on this matter to allow this establishment to sell those types of items. I don't think it's going to cause a bunch of derelicts to come in here and say, hey, where's my Bob Marley shirt, or I want a mug or whatever. And my counterpoint to your mug argument, Bob, is, well, I think you go into any home in the country, somebody's got a mug or a glass there. So, to say, mugs are going to be used for incidental use, that's kind of a far stretch to me. But at the end of the day, it's a retail, the country is a, we should be allowed to be free to sell those types of items within our business. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The other two want to comment, preferably on the sale of additional items. I would be interested in hearing 2 more comments on that.
I'll go first then. I concur with the hours. I concur with the access or egress opportunity. As far as it's been good. It's been good hearing the viewpoints of the commissioners, but I still tend to want to narrow it down and keep it to those items that would help to ingest the drug and keep it to that at this stage.
Thank you. Commissioner.
So the way I was interpreting the proposed language is that it is limited to those items, as it says, incidental to its use. So my takeaway was that was what was being asked for, was the devices that are, I'll say, unique and specific to the ingestion of the marijuana. So, that aid in that. So I thought the language as proposed was okay because it didn't allow for additional items to be sold. So I didn't know that there was a need to further restrict.
Thank you, Commissioner Harris. Phyllis. That's quite okay. Help me on number 3 here. I think that there is a desire. I appreciate Vice Chair Anderson giving his feedback. I would say my poll is that there's a want to limit to delivery methods of the marijuana, the medical marijuana. I know we're just making a recommendation to council. Is there anything we need to change in the language for that specific piece? I think we're all good with the hours. I think we're good with the emergency doors. I think the sale of items. How are you feeling about that, Phyllis?
Chairman Sippel, members of the commission. When we originally proposed this language, my thought was that it was rather restrictive, like Commissioner Harris said. The T-shirts and mugs came up, and in my opinion, incidental to its use would not include that. It might be an interpretation by a zoning administrator that might find that would be the case, that they would be incidental. But to my mind, incidental to its use means items needed for using and ingesting the medicine. That being said, the language is not written in stone, and we could consider the commission's comments in finalizing the language before it goes to council, based on your comments.
I would say that is the sentence I was looking for, is that based on the comments, we could tighten it up a little bit more, maybe items not included, examples or something like that. So I appreciate that feedback. With that, Commissioner Cavity, yes.
I appreciate Mary's comments and also your comments too, but that the language may appear to be fine, but we've been stung by definitions before that aren't narrow enough, and that's my only concern. I appreciate the work that went into trying to find language. I know Bob and I talked about this during our tour, and I know he took it away and really put some work into it, and I appreciate that. I really just want to make sure that the definition is narrow enough, and maybe, let me just throw out there, and I don't pretend to know all the ways to receive the drug, but we could say something to the effect of, and devices devices that allow and how did you say it, Bob? The inhalation, the vaporizing, or something to that effect. We just add the few different methods of ingestion, and we say devices associated with those delivery systems, and that's enough. I think that really, to me, would hone it into a way that they could get what they need sold in order for the customers not to have to go to 2 or 3 different locations to get those devices. But I think it does clearly exclude the marketing paraphernalia that I don't think is part of this process as being medicinally required type stuff, so, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Johns.
Only thing I'm afraid of is, that, because this is a new industry, and they're coming up with all sorts of different ways to be able to serve the client. It could become a patch later on, who knows? But if we're sitting there trying to second guess on how they do their business and the doctors provide for their patients, I'm not a doctor, so I would hate to sit there and say, this is the only way that you can deliver and how to sell your product, because that's not really our purview. I'm kind of, personally, I'm kind of okay with the language of leaving it broad for them and then let the council or the lawyers, the attorneys, figure out how that definition fell through. And I appreciate you saying that the town's been burnt before on it. I'm newer on the zoning. I usually comment on buildings, but I just really hate to see tying it down to that much about an industry that our knowledge is very limited.
I honestly feel like Phyllis and her staff and our staff has got a good idea of where we're at on this. I don't know that, as far as the definition for the third, I would be comfortable with having them do what Phyllis said. So if there's anything that we'd like to chat about outside of that, I would be open to that. Otherwise, I would like to call for a motion. Commissioner Cavan.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Okay, Chairman. I move to recommend approval to the Town Council for Z17-1000 medical marijuana facilities with one adjustment to the third point related to the sale of merchandise, and that point be modified by the town legal staff to restrict the sale of merchandise to the delivery systems only.
And to incorporate the comments made at the commission.
Amen.
Did you get the second part, Phyllis? Incorporate the comments made at the commission. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Cavity, second by Commissioner Ayler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening and helping us through the process, Bob. Good job on that one. Administrative items. I'm looking for approval of the minutes from the study session and regular meeting of March 1st, 2017. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the planning commission meeting minutes.
There's been a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Anderson, second by Commissioner Cavity. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
I
opposed?
abstained since I wasn't here.
One abstention. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, communications, report from chairman or members of the commission on current events. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? Okay. Report from our council liaison on current events.
Hello, members of the commission. Thank you very much. I just wanted to comment on a couple things. You saw that we had Chief Randy Bryce in the back of the room this evening in case you needed some of his wisdom during the case that you just heard. And Randy is one of our commanders for the police department and is serving in the interim role as police chief while we make the decision on who that new police chief will be. We have 5 applicants and candidates that we have met, and they've gone through a grueling process this week with the town, and I met them all last night, and we should have that decision coming out pretty soon about who our new police chief will be, and our interim chief, Bryce, will go back to being one of our commanders here in the police department. He's doing an amazing job here in Gilbert in that position. Another thing I'd like to report to you is that the Chandler Christian Community Center is holding a walk in the park on Saturday morning, April 8th at 8 a.m. That'll be held at Discovery Park, and people can register at chandlerfoodbank.org if they'd like to attend, and it is to walk all over poverty, and I will be there representing the town council and the town of Gilbert. Gilbert's Global Village Festival is Saturday, April 8th, right here at 50 East Civic Center Drive from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. As part of Valley Bike Month, they're encouraging families to ride their bikes to the event. If you've never been, it's a multicultural family event. There'll be 4 entertainment stages that will include some traditional and contemporary forms of dance, music. There will be children's activities, arts, crafts, and ethnic foods. And then we do a parade of flags and countries at around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon that we will be participating in. And we have children dressed up and carrying the flags from all of the countries represented. So if you're looking for something fun to do this weekend, that's a great event for families, and come on down. Otherwise, I don't think I have anything else to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Report from our planning manager. Linda.
My favorite part of the meeting, to thank you. Good conversation tonight. I appreciate that you recognized a wonderful planning staff. I also would like to recognize Phyllis Smiley for all her work with us, our great clerk taker, Debbie here, and also we have a new attorney, Nancy Davidson, who is here for her first evening. So maybe she could say a couple words and introduce herself.
Good evening. I didn't expect to say anything this evening, but we met earlier, and it's a pleasure to be serving you in the future. And my background, I worked for various cities and towns. I worked for the city of Tempe for a few years, Maricopa, Coolidge, and then many of the special districts in Pinal County. And I've worked mostly in land use, but I worked in different areas as well, in private corporate law as well. And so I look forward to working with you.
Welcome.
And so just as closing, thank you so much for what you do here and what you do with us as you help us guide our applicants outside of the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. With that, I will go ahead and adjourn our regular meeting for this evening and reopen our study session.